Next, from the University of Illinois at Springfield, Dr. George Close, an education policy analyst at the Heartland Institute, discusses what he calls good and bad plans for education reform in Illinois. This runs about 30 minutes.
The Heartland Institute is a 23-year-old think tank. It's based in Chicago, and it seeks out free market solutions to social and economic problems. And what I wanted to do tonight to talk about solutions to the funding and performance problems of our public schools in Illinois, and I plan to cover, or try to cover in the next 20-25 minutes. First, what we spend now and what we're obligated to spend. Public school performance. 3, what we can do to help children now while we're waiting for the schools to reform. A quick review of some popular plans for education reform that aren't likely to work. What does work and why we need competition to bring it about. And finally, a quick review of school choice options that legislators could make available. First, what do we spend now and what are we obligated to spend? Now, the figures that I've got are slightly different from the ones that Jeff showed earlier. I go regularly to a report that's produced twice a year by the National Education Association that provides information on all the states across the country in terms of spending and all kinds of different classifications. And their latest report indicates that total education revenues for Illinois in the year 2005-2006 were $23.4 billion. That's total revenues, made up of about 8% federal, 28% state, totaling $6.6 billion, and 64% from local sources. The NEA also reported total spending in Illinois, which includes not only current expenditures, instructional expenditures, operational expenditures, it also includes interest on debt and capital outlays. That totals $23.2 billion, which works out to about $12,100 per pupil in average daily attendance. That's about $800 to $1,000 more than the average that's spent nationally. Now, that's how much we spent in Illinois in 2005-2006, but it doesn't include what we're obligated to spend on behalf of education and the people who deliver education. And I'm referring to the unfunded liability in the Teacher Retirement Fund. The total unfunded liability in Illinois' pension funds, according to a recent report in Budget and Tax News, is $55 billion. Now, to make that whole, to pay for it, which every taxpayer is obligated to do, it has to be done. The most conservative way of doing that is to issue a bond right now for $55 billion and pay it off over the next 30 years at equal payments in every year. The Teacher Retirement Fund makes up about 57 to 60% of that debt, so that would add about $2.5 billion to the spending that we should have spent in 2005-2006, which brings the spending, the actual spending that we should be making, up to about $25.9 billion, which is about $13,400 per student. Now, there's a big question about whether we should increase the amount that we spend on education in Illinois. I think the first priority is to meet the obligations that we have. Whether there's any stomach for raising taxes even more to meet some additional obligations is really up to legislators. But this is the liability that we have to face right now, and it's very substantial. What we really need to look at, I think, is how to get the best value out of the operational dollars that we currently spend on our public schools. Jeff mentioned earlier about the performance of the public schools, and the most fundamental measure of the performance of a school system is the high school graduation rate. Illinois graduates about 120,000 to 125,000 students each year. With about 2.1 million students, if you look back in 8th grade, you see there are about 160, 165,000 students in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, but of those only 120, 125,000 actually graduate. So we've got a graduation rate of less than 80%, which is not really very good. The largest school system in the state, the Chicago Public Schools, has a graduation rate of only 50%. It's been 50% since the early 80s. You know that we've had, I think, at least 3 reforms of the Chicago Public Schools. We've had substantial amounts of money that have been invested in the public schools. The current spending is over $12,000 per student. The mayor's been in control of the Chicago Public Schools for 12 years now. It's enough time for students to move all the way through the system. The graduation rate is still only about 50%. In terms of the performance of the students in those schools, the National Assessment of Educational Progress does an analysis on urban schools. And if we look at the 8th grade proficiency level, nationally, about 29% of students score at proficient or above in reading. That's really not very good. In Chicago, it's 17%. If you look at the students in reading who score below basic on this test, it means that they really are not scoring well enough to even be registering. I mean, they don't function as readers at 8th grade. Nationally, 29% of students fall into that category. In Chicago, it's 40%. So it's no wonder we've got a 50% graduation rate. 40% of the kids in 8th grade really can't read very well. This is a system that's failing students, and we need to find a way of getting the students out. Now, the No Child Left Behind law has an option which says if your child is in a failing school, they can transfer to another school that isn't failing. Well, Dan Lips from the Heritage Foundation wrote recently, he said, according to the U.S. Department of Education, less than 1% of nearly 4 million eligible students transferred public schools in the 2003-2004 school year. Now, that's not Chicago, but what Chicago is doing is typical of school districts across the nation. They're not really informing parents very well about what options are available, and they're not making many choice options available. So kids who are in failing schools are basically stuck there. I mean, these are schools that have been failing for 6 years now. So what do we do? What can we do now? If we try and reform the public schools, it's going to take a while. It's going to take a while to implement. It's going to take a while to get results. So what can we do right now to help children, get children out of these failing schools? Well, former Education Secretary Richard Riley, in a speech in 1999, he said, quote, "If a school is failing its students, we ought to react like our house is on fire." I totally agree. The focus is exactly right. We get the kids out. We don't worry about saving the building, which seems to be the emphasis with failing schools. We've got to do things for the school. We've got to do things for the kids. We've got to get the kids out.